Appointment of Towing Advisory Board.
Yes, Mayor, as I mentioned last month, staff would like to have a formal contract with tow companies to pool inoperable vehicles, what we consider junk vehicles, as well as anything that would be disabled or in need of towing. It's really a protection for the city and for residents that we have, we know what our price is instead of it's not a per vehicle rate or so forth. And in order to be able to enter into contracts with these tow companies, our attorney advised us that we had to form a tow advisory committee, and it has specific representation on the committee to advise us on the policies and what would go into that contract. So it has to have representation from law enforcement, local tow companies, and then some citizen representation. So we have suggested some individuals that have indicated willingness to serve. Of course, you can accept or decline these individuals, as well as add any individuals you'd like to add. But you see on your memo there, we had representatives from Shade Tree Towing, Dewey's Automotive, Lance Perkins, Darrell Lynn, and then from law enforcement, Tony Smallwood and Juan Rodan, and then Ron Leister is indicated willingness to serve.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah.
All right.
What is this going to, will the citizens be notified before anything is done?
This doesn't affect the citizens as far as, there's no change in ordinances as far as, we've been towing or we've been notifying residents that have inoperable vehicles. This handles the backside of that. I would say most residents, once they're notified, they remove the vehicle themselves or they bring it into compliance. This handles those vehicles where they choose not to bring it into compliance, the timeline expires, and then the city has to go out and tow it. And we want to make sure that we minimize our costs on that. And ideally for a contract, and in my past experience has been, we don't actually pay for the tow of those vehicles. We have an arrangement with a tow company where they're capped at both towing and storage fees if the person wants to recover the vehicle, and if the person doesn't recover the vehicle, then that tow company can take possession of the car through safe procedures. But it protects the city because it'll limit in these cases we wouldn't pay anything for the towing of the vehicles, and it also protects the resident because there's a cap, like $35 a day for towing, for instance. So if somebody pulled, say, one of your constituents' car, and we had tow company A pull it, they can't charge that constituent $80 a day and then charge somebody else $30 a day. This sets that amount, so there's consistency among residents. On the other side, when it's an inoperable vehicle, when a car has to be, if it's disabled, if it's an accident, if there's say a drunk driving or whatever, we put rules in place in terms, again, what they can charge to pull. So again, you don't have a resident that's being charged $400 and another one's being charged $1,000 or what have you. So it sets consistency across the board for residents.
But they still would have a choice of who they want to get. Say if I wanted to get Dewey, and it's not Dewey's turn.
Are you speaking of junk vehicles, or if, say, you were in an accident?
Either one.
If it was a junk vehicle, that would be your choice if you initiated. Say you received a notice that you had an inoperable vehicle, you had the time to remove it. You could choose, say Dewey, say, hey Dewey, can you come and get this car? Then that's a relationship between you and the tow company. If you choose to do nothing, as some individuals do, then, as I say, it's worse. When we send these notices out, we have to follow up. But the worst thing to do in those cases is do nothing. So, in that case, let's say the time expired, then we would notify whoever's on our list, and we would rotate among. If we had 3 companies, we would just simply rotate that list, and then they would come out and take possession of the car. In that case, you wouldn't have a choice. But if you did it prior to us coming out and towing it, that's your choice. It would be the same thing like if you were in an accident or something. If you got somebody that you want to call, you certainly could do that. But if we initiate that, we have somebody that's on that call, and we just rotate through that list.
So is the list made up of tow companies within the city?
There's one city and one county. Now, we want to have representation on both, and there is an issue for city tow companies being able to sufficiently store vehicles, but we want to make sure they have enough space. We don't want to create a location where we're removing junk vehicles from residential properties, and then we have it on a lot that's not sufficient. So typically in these agreements, you have to have sufficient storage space, which you may not be able to obtain if you have storage in the city. Now, there are companies that may have a tow business in the city, but their storage lot is out in the county. So the individuals on the list here, they've indicated a willingness to enter into a contract with us.
But you will open this up to others who want to...
That you can make that. If there's others, I just gave you a starting point. And
Now, would this be a board to simply come up with policies and procedures and then it go out to whoever wants to, I guess, lack of a better term, RFP for that
yes,
service?
what they would do is they book, or they give us feedback on what to include, what not to include, rates, I mean, those sort of things. We are restricted by state law on some of that. So, but yes, then we'll come up with a contract, and then at that point, I mean, we'll notify, everyone definitely everyone in the city and everyone in the immediate area to see if they're willing to do that. So, because as I said, this is typically a contract where we don't pay for the towing. It's just they're able to recover from the towing and storage of vehicles if the owner of the car chooses to recover the vehicle, and if they don't, then they're able to take possession of the car, sell it for scrap, whatever. But it's not a relationship where we would pay them, a certain dollar amount for every tow. So some tow companies may be apprehensive to enter into the agreement. So, but we'd give a fair opportunity to everyone involved.
So the contract you're talking about, this advisory board will create a contract that would be used with any towing service that wanted to participate.
Correct. It's definitely
Doesn't matter where they're located. So if somebody Cliff Ford wants on this list, if they're willing to accept that contractor rate, then they could be allowed to be on the list.
And it gets to a point where it's just cost prohibitive for somebody to have to tow a vehicle and all this sort of thing because there are limitations on what they can charge. So it may be, I would think it'd be cost prohibitive in some cases for somebody from Clifton Ford to be towing a lot of vehicles over. But they certainly, if they had the willingness to serve and want to accept the terms, they can do that.
So you've got 2 tow companies in Covington that are licensed businesses in the city of Covington. Did they get preferential treatment because they're licensed businesses in the city?
I think that's something the advisory committee could look at and see if that's something that if the city firm should take. And I don't know if the attorney wants to say, I don't know if we can restrict, as far as if it's a city-owned firm or...
Basically, what the contract does is it allows them to get on a rotation list for the police. And then if they're willing to accept, if you push this widely, anybody who's willing to accept the terms could be on the rotation list, but...
We've fought this fight before, as far as having a list and who's on the list, and then Joe calls up and says, why didn't you call me? I've got a business license in the city and you're using somebody in the county. Why is that? Well, I'll just move my business to the county. Seen that happen. So, you know, I agree with the principle. I just think we need to give preferential treatment to Covington businesses.
Is that a contract that we get to approve before it? I mean, because this just sets up the advisory board. Do we actually approve the next step once the contract is?
Yes.
Okay.
You will.
I got one other question. If there's a wreck on Allegheny Avenue and shade trees turn, will they have to sit there till shade tree come from lawnmower?
If they are next on the list.
Well, now, you're talking about two different things.
Yeah.
That's the wreck list. This is the junk car list. Are we having one list?
Well, the advisory committee would look at, there would be two different lists.
Oh, okay.
They're two totally different situations.
That's what I thought.
But
My question still will remain the same. If there is a wreck and it's somebody in the county's turn, will that wreck sit there until they get here?
if it was their turn to come.
But couldn't you just give?
But the way that you can guard against that is having a minimum response time. But you can put all kinds of criteria in terms of having insurance, having the proper equipment, being able to respond in the next amount of time. So you'll have a chance to look at this contract, and that's why you get these tow companies involved in the development of the contract, so they can give their input as far as what's reasonable, what's not reasonable, and so forth. So if that's a concern, and I think that's a very valid concern, that you don't want somebody sitting there for a long time. If they have to be able to respond within, say, 10 minutes, that's going to prohibit somebody coming from way out the area.
Well, no, let me, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alan, I'm sorry.
I would think that the police department could figure out who they could get there, because if you have a wreck on Allegheny Avenue, you're going to have to do something to get it out of the way for traffic and so on and so forth. And I think that should be up to the police department and be exempt from any type of rotation. Because, you know, if you can get somebody in the city that's close, be there in 5 minutes, boom, that's better than if they're down there in Lowmore and they can't get here for a half hour.
Well, how is the list that we currently use for automobile accidents, the list we have in place right now, how is that done?
The list has changed, and the issue that we have is just what you spoke of. We were having response times of 60 minutes, 45 minutes. As an officer, I don't have, or the citizens don't have the use of for 60 minutes while we wait for someone to come to the county. So we switched it to the first rotation is the business in the city. We call them 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If they're not available, then we move to the ones in the county for Rex. And ops is completely different. That's 1 through 8 or 9, and we just call 1 through 8 or 9. The problem that you have is, I'll say hook and tow, for example, whether quick, they're right here, getting to the lot, store 5 or 6 inoperable vehicles, or are we just going to put them all on Fudge Street? Now you've got 6 inoperable vehicles on Fudge Street. So we have to consider, are we just moving junk vehicles from one place to another?
See, that would be my concern, that we take inoperable vehicles and then we junk up a lot on Highland or on Fudge Street or whatever the case may be, that we have somebody on this list and then we have one spot where we end up having 10, 15 of everybody else's junk moved into one very visible lot. Now, that would be my only concern with the whole thing.
So that's one thing to be looked at in this contract. I mean, typically, you have a stipulation, they've got to be in the appropriate zoning classification, they've got to have a certain minimum size lot, have to have screening and fencing. So a lot of these, as I mentioned earlier, these companies in the city, they don't have the storage capacity in the city. But I agree, you don't want to create remove eyesores from all over the city and then concentrate.
Now, just for my slow edification, you know how that is. This tonight only sets the advisory board. This does not get the whole thing moving.
That's-
We have to take the next step to get that moving. Once that advisory board comes up with something, then that's what we consider, but right now, we're just setting the board. Okay.
Right, and the purpose of the advisory board is so that you can regulate. You can't regulate this right now without an advisory board. You can either do it by ordinance or by contract. But before you can regulate it, you have to have the advisory board in place. So it's actually the first step to give you more control over how it's done.
Why would we, when you talk about basically taking turns, why would we not have towing companies within the city cover the city, and towing companies in the county cover the county?
Well, again, a lot of it goes back to having the storage facilities to be able to store the vehicles. And they may have a vehicle, they may have an office in the city, and they may have a storage lot in the county, but we want to ensure that they have adequate space to store vehicles. Because a lot of the time, what happens, they will store the vehicles, they're not recovered by the owner, they sit there for 90 days, whatever, and then disposed of, so they end up being really junkyard. So we got to be very careful with what we're creating here.
Now, what you're saying is, why is there multiple people on this list instead of?
No.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Covington.
Yeah.
No, what I'm
Businesses
saying is if you're Covington Towing companies, then you would cover within the city limits, and county towing companies would cover the county. Instead of having to call a county towing company to cover something, in the city.
And that's something that can be looked at on the budget. You may or may not have.
You may have a circumstance where you'd have to.
Right, but the point of the contract is wherever they're coming from, they've got to meet the regulations that you set. If you want them to have certain lot size or screening, or the whole point of the contract is so that you can regulate how they do it. Whether it's city or county or whomever, you get to regulate how much they charge and where they store the vehicles, which is really important.
Yeah.
Right now, there's no regulation on that, so it's really it's a free system. So
Kind of now is whoever answers the phone first, right?
and really, we're not locked in on required how they pull the vehicles, what kind of equipment they pull the vehicles, how much they charge, all those sort of things that can be regulated.
Are you talking about for junk vehicles, inoperable vehicles, or for
Either
accidents?
one. I mean, how do you?
Accidents, we're going 1, 2, 3 in the city, 1, 2, 3 again, 1, 2, 3 again. And if those three don't answer, then we move to the county. For an option, to be honest, until this gets worked out, we're not doing a whole lot with that, because we want to make sure that you guys have your say and how we're going to do that. As I said, the one concern that I had was, if we use the lots in the city for the in-ops, are we going to put too many vehicles there? When we have just an accident and someone says, tow my vehicle over here to this repair shop, we can take care of that in 10 minutes with someone in the city versus waiting an hour from someone in the county. So we move to that when it comes to in-ops, because I'm not sure exactly what all the lot sizes are around the county. I do know there's some the city can't handle if we started to do, because we could do 20 vehicles. But I'm confident that the city lots cannot handle 20 vehicles. You just would move a problem from one place to another.
Both of these towing services that are on the list, they can both handle
Correct.
a lot of cars.
That's why they were chosen.
And the only concern I would have then is, since they're setting the parameters, they say you got to be able to store 20 cars, and they're the only two that can store 20 cars.
That's a very fair point.
But we do have other input from law enforcement.
And at the end of the day, we still have
We
final
still have
approval. I see what you're saying, though, and keeping it fair.
I'm just being contrary.
Down in the hole.
Yeah, who's mad about that
Y'all
whole?
have got my chair so high, I'm missing it.
Teresa said, just take her chair.
So we do have we got a motion and a second, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So everybody that's in favor of the motion, you want to tell us what the motion is again? I want to vote on it.
To appoint the following to the Towing Advisory Board: Ron Leichter, Tony Smallwood, Juan Roldan, Lance Perkins, and Daryl, I'm not sure about how.
Supposed to be down
Vibe. It's Vibe, I'm not sure how that spelling came out. That's spelled
I
Vibe.
thought he changed his name. See, being contrary.
So,
I make a motion that we...
we are, David made a motion. We're going to vote now.
We go vote now.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess I'm gonna take this.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous, Ms. Wood.